All right, so we've got a really interesting one today.
Yeah, definitely a company that's been making headlines.
Yeah, and you gave us this whole stack of documents about their IPO, and
IPO. It's always exciting, isn't it? A chance to get in on the ground floor.
yeah, exactly. But sometimes these documents can be a little, well, dense, to put it
Oh,
mildly.
absolutely. They're not exactly light reading. Lots of financial jargon, pages of numbers.
So that's where we come in, right? We're going to break it all down, make
Hmm.
it easy to understand, and hopefully help you figure out if this IPO is worth your attention.
That's the goal, right? Sort through all the noise and find those golden nuggets of insight that really matter.
So let's start with the basics. What does this company actually do? At first glance, it looks like another e-commerce platform.
Right, and that's part of the story, but there's a twist. They've actually taken a pretty unique approach. See, unlike traditional e-commerce companies.
They don't hold any inventory.
Exactly.
And see, I was doing my homework.
Good, good. Always a good sign. So instead of stocking warehouses full of products, they've built this sophisticated online platform. And what this platform does is it connects
Hungry customers
hungry customers. Yes.
with restaurants and stores.
Precisely.
So it's like a digital matchmaking service for people who want food or groceries delivered fast and the businesses that can provide them.
That's a great way to put it. They're not in the business of selling products themselves. They're in the business of connecting supply and demand.
And this is where things get even more interesting. They don't even handle the delivery fleet.
Right. They've gone full asset light. They rely on a network of independent delivery partners, which keeps them incredibly flexible and scalable. Think about it.
Yeah, it's a pretty lean operation.
It is. No warehouses to manage, no delivery trucks to maintain. It's all about the platform and the technology that powers it.
So if they're not selling products or doing the deliveries themselves, how do they actually generate revenue?
Good question. It's a multi-pronged approach, actually. First, they get commissions from the restaurants and stores for every order placed through their platform.
So they're taking a cut of each transaction.
Exactly. It's a classic platform business model. Then, of course, they charge delivery fees to users, which is pretty standard in this space.
Makes sense. Anything else?
They also have a growing advertising business. Think targeted ads based on user preferences and ordering habits.
Oh, so they're leveraging that data they're collecting to generate ad revenue. Clever. So they've got this whole ecosystem going on, connecting customers, businesses, and delivery partners, all while generating revenue from multiple streams.
And they're doing it in a market that's absolutely exploding right now.
Yeah.
Online food delivery and quick commerce in India.
Okay, so let's talk about that. We keep hearing about how these sectors are experiencing explosive growth, but what does that actually mean? Give me some numbers.
All right, buckle up. Based on this Red Sea report you've provided, online food delivery in India is seeing a compound annual growth rate of about 42%.
Okay, 42%, that's pretty significant.
It is, but that's nothing compared to quick commerce. This segment is projected to grow at a rate somewhere between 148% and a mind-blowing 169% per year.
Wow, that's like a hockey stick growth curve.
Yeah, it's a rocket ship. And there are a few key factors driving this incredible growth. First, you have India's rapid urbanization. More and more people are moving to cities, which creates a dense customer base for delivery services.
Right, so you've got more people packed into smaller areas, which makes delivery much more efficient.
Exactly. Then you have rising disposable incomes. People have more money to spend on conveniences like food delivery and quick commerce.
And let's not forget the massive increase in digital adoption in India. More and more people have smartphones and are comfortable using apps for everything, including ordering their groceries.
Absolutely. All these factors are combining to create a perfect storm for growth in these sectors, and this company is right in the middle of it.
So they're operating in a high-growth market, which is great. But how are they actually performing within that market? Are they a major player, or are they just getting started?
Well, they're definitely not just getting started. They've managed to capture a significant share of the market, particularly in food delivery.
What about quick commerce? How do they stack up against the competition there?
They're making serious inroads. It's a newer segment, so there's still a lot of room for growth, but they're already a force to be reckoned with.
So they're a major player in a booming market. That's encouraging. But what specifically is driving their success? What are their competitive advantages?
Well, first and foremost, they were early movers in both food delivery and quick commerce. They recognized the potential of these markets early on and established a strong presence.
So they've had time to build brand recognition, gain customer loyalty, and refine their operations. That's a powerful advantage. Anything else?
They've also invested heavily in technology, which is really the backbone of their entire operation. Their platform connects users, restaurants, stores, and delivery partners, managing the whole process seamlessly.
Okay, so they've got the tech side covered. But in a market as competitive as this, technology alone isn't enough. What else sets them apart?
They have a deep understanding of the Indian consumer market. They know what people want, how they behave, and what makes them tick.
So they're tech savvy and in tune with the local market. Makes sense. But every company has its weaknesses, right? What are some potential red flags investors should be aware of?
One area of concern is their reliance on those third-party partners we talked about. They don't control the restaurants or the delivery fleet, which can make it harder to ensure consistent quality and service.
Right, so there's a certain amount of dependence on others to uphold their brand promise. What else?
The regulatory environment in India, especially in e-commerce, can be complex and unpredictable. New rules or changes to existing ones could impact their operations and profitability.
Say, a bit of a regulatory wild card to keep an eye on. Anything else?
Well, competition in this market is absolutely fierce. They're up against some global giants with deep pockets, not to mention nimble local startups looking to disrupt the market.
So staying ahead of the curve requires constant innovation and investment. All right, so we've talked about their business model, the market they operate in, their strengths, and some potential weaknesses. Before we jump into the financial details and their future plans, let's touch on something that's becoming increasingly important for investors. Corporate governance. How does this company stack up?
That's a great question. And their corporate governance structure is actually quite unique. Unlike many companies, there isn't a single identifiable promoter or controlling shareholder. It's a more distributed ownership structure.
Interesting. So no one person is calling all the shots. How does that impact things?
Well, it can be both a strength and a weakness. On the one hand, it suggests a more decentralized decision-making process, greater accountability.
Less potential for one person's whims to steer the company off course. But what about the downsides?
It can sometimes make it harder to pinpoint clear leadership and decision-making authority.
Okay, so it's something investors will want to dig into a little deeper. Understand how decisions are made, who's ultimately accountable, and what about sustainability? How are they addressing environmental and social concerns, especially in an industry like delivery?
That's an important consideration, and it's something we'll need to explore further. The documents we have provide limited information on their specific sustainability initiatives at this stage.
All right, so a bit of a wait-and-see approach on that front. So we've unpacked their business model, we've gotten a sense of the market they're playing in, and we've touched on some of the opportunities and risks they face.
Now let's dive a little bit deeper into this whole competitive landscape because, we've talked about how this is such a hot market in India.
Like a digital Wild West out there, right?
Yeah.
So who are the main players they're going up against? And, what are they doing to try and stand out?
Well, it's really a mix of everything. You've got those big global players, the ones with those deep pockets and tons of experience.
The 800-pound gorillas, right?
Exactly. And then you've got all these startups, they're really well-funded, super agile, and they're just hungry to disrupt things.
Yeah, they're not afraid to take risks, try new things.
Nope. And of course, you can't forget those established local players, the ones who've been around for a while. They really know the market inside and out.
So it's a pretty crowded playing field. How's this company holding up against all that competition?
Well, they've actually done a pretty good job of carving out their own space. Especially in food delivery, they're definitely a leader.
Which makes sense, right? We talked about how they were early movers in that space. But what about quick commerce? How are they doing there?
They're definitely making their mark. Remember, quick commerce is still relatively new, so there's a lot of room for everyone to grow. But they're grabbing market share, and they seem to be doing all the right things to keep that momentum going.
Okay, so they're holding their own. But how are they actually doing it? What's their strategy for attracting and keeping customers?
Well, their whole thing is really focused on two things: convenience and speed. Which, let's be honest, that's what people really want these days. Right?
Yeah, especially in a busy place like India. Time is precious.
Exactly. And they're not just sticking to meal delivery either. They've actually expanded their offerings quite a bit.
Oh, yeah? Like what?
Well, they've got this platform called Dine Out, and it's specifically for restaurant bookings.
Ah, so they're not just about getting food delivered. They're trying to be a part of the whole dining experience.
Exactly. And they've also got these loyalty programs, things like Swiggy One. They give people discounts, special perks, basically encourage them to keep coming back for more.
So they're really building an ecosystem, right? Not just a one-time transaction, but a whole relationship with their customers.
Precisely.
Yeah.
And they're constantly innovating, exploring new delivery models, forming strategic partnerships, even looking at adjacent markets to see where they can expand.
So they're not afraid to think outside the box.
Huh.
But all this growth, all this expansion, it takes money, right?
Oh, absolutely. And that's where this IPO comes in. They're looking to raise a pretty significant amount of capital to fuel their growth plans.
Okay, so IPO, capital, growth, it all sounds good, but let's talk about the elephant in the room. Profitability. Are they actually making money?
The million-dollar question. And as you might expect, the answer isn't quite that simple.
So not a straightforward yes or no.
Not really. You see, while their revenue has been growing like crazy, they've also been spending a lot of money to get there.
Yeah, all those things we talked about, advertising, technology, building out that quick commerce network, it all costs money.
It does. So when you look at their net income, they're not consistently profitable yet. But they're getting there.
Okay, so they're still in the investment phase, but they are showing progress.
Exactly. And one of the things they highlight in their documents is a metric called Consolidated Adjusted EBITDA.
EBITDA. Remind me again what that stands for.
Earnings before interest, taxes, depreciation, and amortization. It's a mouthful, I know.
It is, but it's a pretty important metric, right?
Mm-hmm.
Helps you get a clearer picture of their operating profitability.
Exactly. It kind of strips away some of those non-cash expenses, like depreciation.
So it's like looking under the hood to see how the engine is actually performing.
That's a good analogy. And based on their adjusted EBITDA, things are actually looking pretty good. They're moving in the right direction.
So it's not just about top-line growth. They're also making progress towards sustainable profitability, which is what investors ultimately want to see, right?
Absolutely. But it's important to remember they're operating in a dynamic market. It's common for companies in high-growth phases to prioritize growth over short-term profits.
So it's a balancing act, right? Investors want to see that path to profitability, but they also understand that growth requires upfront investment. Speaking of growth, this company has some pretty ambitious plans, right?
Oh, yeah. They're not shy about their aspirations. Expanding into new cities, investing even more in technology, even exploring new markets and new product offerings.
But what does that actually look like in practice? What are their key areas of focus?
Well, one area they're really betting on is their quick commerce operation. They're all about delivering groceries and everyday essentials in minutes.
It's like having a mini supermarket on your phone, right? Everything delivered to your door super fast.
Mm-hmm.
I can see why that's appealing, especially for busy people in urban areas.
Exactly. And to make it all work, they're investing heavily in these things called dark stores.
Dark stores?
Yeah, they're basically like these micro-fulfillment centers, strategically located throughout cities, so they can get those orders out the door as quickly as possible.
So that's the secret sauce behind the super fast deliveries. It's not magic, it's just really smart logistics and inventory placement.
Precisely. And the growth they've seen in this area is impressive. They've gone from having just a handful of these dark stores to hundreds in a very short period of time.
Wow, that's a serious commitment to quick commerce.
It is. And it does require a lot of upfront investment, setting up these dark stores, getting them stocked, but they clearly believe it's the future.
It's a big bet, but it could pay off big time if they're right. What else is on their growth agenda?
They're also looking at ways to really leverage their technology and data to create new revenue streams. Things like targeted advertising, maybe even offering data-driven insights to their partner businesses.
So they're not just a delivery platform, they're becoming a data powerhouse as well. That's pretty smart, especially in today's data-driven world. But let's circle back to those potential red flags we talked about earlier, starting with their reliance on those third-party partners.
Right, that's always a potential risk, isn't it? Relying on others to deliver a consistent experience can be tricky.
Exactly. What are they doing to try and mitigate that risk?
Well, they're being pretty proactive about it. They've got these robust onboarding processes for their partners, restaurant stores, delivery drivers, making sure everyone's on the same page from the start. And they're constantly monitoring performance, providing feedback, and offering training programs to maintain those quality standards.
So they're trying to build a system where, even though they don't directly control every aspect of the process, they can still ensure a certain level of quality and consistency.
Exactly. It's about setting clear expectations, providing the right support, and having those systems in place to catch any issues early on.
Makes sense. And what about that other red flag, the whole regulatory uncertainty in India?
Yeah, that's a big one, and it's something they're definitely keeping a close eye on. The government's been paying more attention to the e-commerce sector lately, and there's always the possibility of new regulations or changes to existing ones that could throw a wrench in their plans.
What are some of the specific areas where regulators are focusing their attention?
Well, there's been a lot of talk about things like food safety regulations for online platforms, making sure the food that's being delivered meets all the necessary standards.
Which is a valid concern, right?
Yeah.
Food safety is super important.
Absolutely. And then there are potential labor protections for delivery partners, ensuring they're being treated fairly and have decent working conditions.
Right. The whole gig economy model has come under a lot of scrutiny lately. It's good that they're thinking about those things.
They are, and then there's the whole data privacy landscape, which is constantly evolving.
Yeah, data privacy is a hot button issue everywhere these days, so it sounds like they've got a lot of balls in the air when it comes to regulatory compliance.
They do, and how well they manage these challenges could have a big impact on their future success.
All right, so before we move on to our final thoughts on this company and their IPO, let's touch on something that we haven't talked about too much yet: sustainability.
It's becoming such a crucial factor for investors these days, isn't it? It's not just about financial returns anymore. It's also about the impact a company has on the world.
Exactly. People want to invest in companies that are doing things the right way, that are making a positive difference.
Mhm.
So how does this company measure up in terms of sustainability?
Well, based on the documents we've seen, it's still a bit of a work in progress. They definitely touch on sustainability, but they don't go into a ton of detail about their specific initiatives or their long-term goals.
So what are some of the things investors will be looking for more information on?
Well, one of the big ones is their environmental footprint. Especially in the delivery business, there are a lot of potential impacts. Things like packaging waste and emissions from all those vehicles on the road.
Right, so investors will want to see what they're doing to reduce those impacts, maybe explore more sustainable packaging options, optimize delivery routes, maybe even invest in electric vehicles.
Exactly. And then there's the whole social impact side of things.
Mhm.
Things like fair labor practices, making sure those delivery partners are being treated fairly, and ensuring they're sourcing their products ethically.
So it sounds like there's definitely room for improvement on the sustainability front, but it's also an opportunity for them to really differentiate themselves and appeal to investors who are looking for companies that are doing good while doing well.
Absolutely. And as they mature as a company and prepare for this IPO, they'll need to make sure they're addressing these concerns and demonstrating a genuine commitment to sustainability if they want to attract those investors who are prioritizing those factors.
Okay, so we've covered a lot of ground here. We've talked about their business model, their competition, their growth strategy, the risks they face, and even touched on some of the softer factors like corporate governance and sustainability. So I think we've done a pretty good job of, really getting into the nitty-gritty of this company.
Yeah, we've covered a lot of ground.
Their story, how they got to where they are, you know, all the challenges and opportunities they're facing.
It's been quite a journey, from a small startup to a major player in one of the most dynamic markets in the world.
And now for the big question, the one that everyone's been waiting for. Is this IPO worth your attention? Is it time to pull the trigger and invest?
That, my friend, is the question of the day. And honestly, there's no easy answer. It really depends on your own individual circumstances, right?
Yeah, your investment goals, how much risk you're comfortable with. We can't give you financial advice, but we can help you weigh the pros and cons.
Yeah.
So let's do a quick recap. What have we learned about this company?
Well, on the plus side, they're operating in a market that's absolutely booming. I mean, those growth numbers we talked about, they're incredible. And they're not just riding the wave, they're actually leading the charge in a lot of ways.
Right, they've got a strong market position. They're innovating. They've built a really impressive technology platform. They've got that first mover advantage, a deep understanding of the Indian market. I mean, these are all really strong points in their favor.
They are. But of course, it's not all perfect, right? There are definitely some risks to consider. The competition is fierce. There are those big global players we talked about, not to mention the up-and-coming startups who are always nipping at their heels.
And then there's the whole regulatory landscape, which can be a bit unpredictable. New rules, changing policies. It's definitely something to keep in mind.
And we can't forget about their reliance on those third-party partners for things like delivery and fulfillment.
Yeah.
It can be tough to maintain those quality standards when you're not in complete control of the process.
Right. It adds a layer of complexity and risk.
Yeah.
And of course, there's the whole profitability question.
Yeah, they're making progress, but they're not quite there yet in terms of consistent net income profitability.
And their sustainability initiatives, while promising, definitely need further development and transparency. So it's a mixed bag, right? There's a lot to like about this company, but there are also some potential downsides that investors need to be aware of.
Exactly. And that's where your own due diligence comes in. Take everything we've talked about, go through those documents you've got, and really dig deep.
Look beyond the headlines, scrutinize those numbers, think critically about the company's strengths and weaknesses, the opportunities and threats they face. Consider their competitive landscape, their growth strategy, their ability to navigate the regulatory environment.
And don't overlook those softer factors, like their corporate culture, their leadership team, their commitment to things like sustainability and social responsibility.
It's all about making an informed decision, right? Weighing the potential rewards against the risks and deciding whether this investment aligns with your own personal goals.
And remember, investing in an IPO is inherently risky. Past performance is never a guarantee of future success.
So do your homework, talk to a financial advisor if you need to, and never invest more than you can afford to lose.
Wise words.
Well, I think that about wraps it up for this deep dive. We've taken you on quite a journey. Hopefully, you've learned a thing or two about this fascinating company, their journey, their challenges, their aspirations, and hopefully, we've given you the information you need to make a well-informed decision about whether or not to invest in their IPO.
It's been a pleasure diving deep with you.
And remember, the world of investing is full of amazing stories and opportunities, so keep exploring, keep learning, and keep diving deep.